council. I have one. I don't know that anyone else has anything. Yes, sir.
All right. Can we get a copy of the city's emergency management plan emailed to us?
It's about that thick.
Well, can I get a hard copy then?
Oh, absolutely. And if I can email it in portions, I will. But would you
Hard
rather
copy,
have-
hard
Would you rather
copy,
have a
yeah.
hard copy? Okay.
Yep. And then how about the joint plan with the county?
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the emergency plan. And we have addendums, appendixes for each department. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I think
I'll
that's
take a
what-
look at it. 'Cause when I was reading through the municipal code, it appeared to me like we had to have our own, and then we could incorporate that within the counties as a joint one, but we have to have our own separate one.
And it's got the individual appendixes. It's probably addressing that.
Okay.
Departmental.
And when was the last time that was brought for city council approval? Because I don't know, it said it was updated in the paper 5 years ago. And I haven't been on council 5 years, but I've never seen it. And municipal code says it has to be approved by city council, so I was just wondering if it was updated 5 years ago as reported in the paper. Did city council approve it at that time? Okay. And also, when I was digging through municipal code, I ran across Director of Public Works and Director of the Water Department. They're both positions. When were they combined?
Sometime in the 90s. I don't have an exact date.
Okay,
And the code was changed to reflect those titles. So,
not the one that's online right now.
okay. But we went through code revisions several years ago and changed those titles. So anyway,
Okay, well, the one I pulled up, well, it was an old one, but I thought it was the latest one.
Is that the Muni Code site?
Uh-huh. Muni code
That's a
site.
subscription service, Thomas, right?
it should be updated.
Right.
It's unless something's been adopted this year and we haven't done those revisions yet.
And then, when we have presentations made to us at the council, I've found it difficult to have a good comment session between us because we don't have time to review those prior to the meeting. And I've talked to some other counties, and specifically in Chambers County, and there's nothing a presentation can't be made before their commissioners unless it's presented before. And I was just wondering if we could start getting all those presentations with our package instead of when we show up here and someone does the PowerPoint presentation or something, so we can actually have a chance to review it and ask appropriate questions at the time.
Yeah, if council wishes to do that. Some of those presentations, though, need some explanation. So, and that's why a lot of times we present it that night to explain it. But no, if that's council's wish, that is no problem at all.
We're talking about occasional PowerPoints, pretty much, right? Because, I mean, the packet agenda typically has most of what you need with the CM1. You're talking about things outside of that, I guess.
City manager
Still,
reports.
Yeah, city manager report stuff that
Sure.
we can't, I don't feel like I can get prepared enough to ask the questions I want always. I'm trying to quickly think on my feet as we're going through it. I'd like a little bit more prep time. And the final one, what constituted the need to call this as a special meeting?
Because it's
I-
not regularly scheduled,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, and I asked the mayor for consideration with the irrigation system, since if council does not wish for us to purchase the irrigation system, we need to send it back. If they do, then we need to start installing it so we can start not doing manual irrigation over there and turning things on and off. So
We had I think there's a 3-week gap here between next
There
meeting.
was.
So I didn't want to wait that long either.
Okay, so I mean, if it was, I was just thinking if it was that urgent, we should have done it when we first initiated it as a special meeting. But
I'm sorry, say that again?
like when contract was first brought to the city manager, I think that was the time for the special meeting if it was urgent, and take care of it then, as opposed to doing it further down the line. But that's just a difference
Well,
of opinion. It's just a difference.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's good. It's nothing wrong with discussing it. It was already executed. We just need to ratify it.
And I hated to see Colby and his crew in a holding pattern for 3 weeks.
Okay.
When well, we'll get to that, I guess, when, we can talk about it more when we get to that
Well,
item.
and just as a reminder for the public, we have to post 72 hours out. And I was out of town Monday and Tuesday, so this was the soonest because we couldn't post unless you wanted to have a meeting on Saturday, and I assume nobody wanted to meet on Saturday. We couldn't post,
Okay.
that's
Thank you.
why today.
That's all on my
Uh,
list.
Let me ask a question. Does anybody else want a hard copy of the emergency plan when I'm making that for Mr. Balknight? Okay,
I'd like an email copy.
okay.
Maybe just put it on a USB or something, I don't know.
Okay.
Just y'all's decision, I'm just saying.
So, but Mr. De La Garza, you'd like a hard copy? Okay, sure.
To Sherman,
Okay, sure.
please.
Absolutely.
Okay, are there any other items from council besides? So I was contacted about some of the water leaks that have occurred as a result of damage caused by the hurricane. And what I mean by that is when a tree falls over in someone's yard and pulls up the water line. Have y'all had anybody contact you about any of that? Okay. You have? Okay, I understand there's a number of those cases out there. One in particular was pretty large, extreme amount, dollar amount on the bill, and wanted to have that discussion with y'all about any consideration for any forgiveness on some of those. If there was forgiveness given in some form or factor on the bill or whatever, it'd have to be very objectified and, specific time frame or whatever. Staff, do you want to comment? I know I talked to you about it, we talked to Donald. I'll start out with some questions. Do you have estimates of how many people are affected? I know that you may not have had time today to do that,
But we
but
really don't know how many were affected. People that called in were told that they had to pay the bill, that there was no exception. Some were given options, to do a payout plan, in essence, a payment plan, for
Right.
up to 4 months if they wish to do that. So, and you've had a few take advantage of that.
That's correct. We've had a few, we know of a handful right off the top of our heads because those are ones that were, needed a little bit more customer service, or they did the payment arrangements, or there was some other special circumstances with them. But as far as how many, had a leak associated with the hurricane, I just can't tell you that at this point. I know there was dozens and dozens and dozens of phone calls immediately after the hurricane, and so we'd have to do some sort of query that my staff, I'm not 100% sure they can just do that themselves, or we'd have to go to our software provider and get a little bit more help to get that done.
were you saying the phone calls were related to that very topic of leaks?
There
excessive?
were many phone calls related to tree fell in my yard, broke my water line, and I had a leak, and we would try to help them look up the data, or they would call once they got their bill and had questions about what they could do. And our policy has always been that type of leak on private property caused by something on the private side, we that's taken care of by the
Right.
by the resident, by the customer.
And I understand that, that policy, and I do agree with it. I know that with a situation like this with the hurricane, it's a little different. So what I was thinking for council to consider, and the only thing we would do probably is get a consensus tonight and then need more information, because I kind of wanted some more information myself, that in order to keep everyone coming out of the woodwork and wanting their water bill covered, which unfortunately that might happen, and we don't want that. If we specified a date range, or if we looked at the bills for that billing cycle, and anyone that had double the usage they had in the prior month would indicate a potential problem, especially since I doubt anyone was watering their yard. Now, a lot of those bills have been paid already, right?
Yes, sir.
People paid those, so they would
Many-
have to
many of
come
those.
back, and they would not be given the cash or refund. That would be credited towards another month, probably. And then the amount of, I'm using the word forgiveness for lack of another word, maybe 50%. I don't know. So if you had a $400 bill, we'd go to 200. That's subject to consideration for all of y'all. I know this is brand new for y'all, so you might want to think about it.
I know this messes with the agenda, but I think there are some people here that might want to speak to this too under citizen communication. and so I'm just throwing that
Sure.
out there before we get too deep into it as to whether we want to discuss it or maybe get
We can,
some real situations.
and we can hear from them, and then I don't see why we can't, I can open us back up for us to discuss. I don't see any problem with that. Would y'all like to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And those ideas I threw out were just mine. You know, I don't know, I would look at the prior 3 months' bills, but you know, we have to be careful to create this huge burden on the water department necessarily, and having to make, the decision needs to be easy for their department.
I agree.
You know what I mean? I think y'all would understand that. It starts to get nitpicky, so, okay. Okay, well, we'll hear from the public and then talk some more. So is there anything else, items from council?
I had one clarification on that emergency plan. Is there anything in there that needs to be redacted for public safety from the police or fire part of the plan? Please take that into consideration.
I'll look.
There might be some things with respect to the port I'm aware of too, I don't know. So, yeah.
But just from a security standpoint, so, thank you.
Okay, so we'll close items from council and move into citizens' communication. And that's time for anybody to come on up to the podium and speak now, so. And we put the clock up there to try to, if we have a whole lot of people, as a courteous to everyone, try to limit your comments to 5 minutes at best.
I won't take that long. My name's Lisa with Victoria Ag and Ranch. Everybody knows that's on Moody Street. We had a neighbor's tree fall over, broke the line. We had the flood come right behind it. I had a $49 bill that came out $990. When you are in a floodplain and you got the Guadalupe in the front and the back, you don't know you have a water leak to even fix. That's why we're saying y'all got to have some mercy, at least for the people that live on the Guadalupe. Because I couldn't even get to the place even to look at it much of the time because they had it roped off. But that's all I have to say.
And yours, and ma'am, it's right there on the highway as you cross the river bridge on the right?
On the right, yes, sir.
Where
That
was
white-
the
that
leak?
white bit.
Out back?
Out back on the side, right at the side where all of the river was. Well, the
Okay.
river was all over it, but the majority of it for the longest was in the back.
Hmm.
And it was right by the tree from the neighbor.
Okay. I don't have any problem with if y'all want to ask a question.
I was just curious how you discovered the leak and when and what you did in
Well,
terms
when
of
we
fixing
finally
it.
went in and turned on the water, and there was no water coming out.
Okay,
So I called the city to see if the water was turned off. The water was not turned off. So I sent my husband found the leak after he turned off the water line. But that was after the water had already drained. It was draining at the time.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay, you said if you went back 3 months and then gave him a 50% credit, in her situation, it's not gonna help her. So I don't think the 50% should be a figure we should stick to. I think maybe a prorated of maybe the last 3, 4 months, because in her situation, we're not helping her, we're just getting her $450 when her bill was regularly $49, okay? So we need to take those kind of things into consideration.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to hear. That's what I kind of meant. We could average the last 3 months. You could look at the last month. You could just cut them all in half. I understand, you know, you may or may not like some of these. I'm just throwing that out for discussion. So, do y'all have any more questions? It's Ms. Charbula, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How long from, say, the night of the hurricane, when were y'all able to get back into your property to look at it and determine that they're, turn
Well,
the water faucet on?
We couldn't, because where the water was leaking, the Guadalupe was in the
No,
backyard.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but when,
Soon
how
as-
long of a duration from?
As soon as it started draining off. I don't know exactly how many
Okay.
days that was, sir.
That's what I was questioning, so I could get an idea of time frame that we needed to be looking at where,
Well, so the hurricane was Friday night, Saturday morning. The river peaked Wednesday, right? Crested Wednesday and went down by what, Friday? So almost 7 days, I
Yes.
guess,
yeah.
if that, yeah.
And we've been there since 1990, and we've never had a water bill that high.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Donald may have, well, we're still in citizens communication. Let's see if anyone else. Citizens communication is still open if anyone else would like to come up and speak. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close citizens communication and we'll come, y'all want to come back to that issue? Let's do the rest of this. Is that
You
okay?
talking about right now or later?
What would you like to do?
I would like to discuss something right now.
Finish it.
Let's finish it. Okay, we can talk about it right now. So we're going to open
Okay.
items from council again. Go ahead.
My question is, okay, if there are not that many cases, can you see them on a one-to-one basis instead of trying to just, let's give you a percentage or let's give you, because you said you can count the ones that you do have that had that problem.
Let me rephrase that. I can count the ones that I know of that were brought to my attention or that needed some additional customer service and some, had some extenuating factors, but there were dozens and dozens of people who called in with leaks that we had already talked to saying, I'm sorry, our standard policy is customers responsible for leaks on their side. And those customers just paid their bills. So I have no way to go back and easily find those customers. There's, other than running some sort of a query in our system that will tell me about usage during that time.
If you were to compare your collections from, say, August to September to October, you couldn't get some kind of an average that you could think, okay, so many more people got hit?
I wouldn't be able to identify which
No,
person,
not
no.
identify every one of them,
Yeah.
but you could tell that there was more than whatever you're trying to work with right now. Let's say we have 100 people, 25 got affected. Some way of determining.
I think I could go back and do it. I just couldn't do it quickly,
I know
and I don't have it
individual-
right now.
Yeah,
But
I know.
I think we
Okay.
could go back and do it. It's just gonna take some time
Why don't we
and some resources.
change the method and have people be responsible to call in and report the issue to the city so that it can be identified, so that they take care of their own issue, that they know they had a water leak, they have a high bill, you have a period, 2, 3, or 4 weeks where you have set times, please report it during this time so we can investigate each one. We don't have to worry about, can we do a database query, can we do this comparison? Come in, report it. You can easily look at their individual bills to see if there's validity behind it. Have someone go to the site and, okay, here's where it happened, here's the tree.
Yeah, and, the thing about that, I guess, is that, okay, like the Ag and Ranch place probably never exceeded the amount of water that comes with the base bill. You know what I mean? You get like the fee for the pipes, and then you have a water fee. They probably never exceeded that. You go to the residential side. Now, here's the deal. Unless we give staff clear direction, only accounts where the water usage was double, for example. If we don't give them that direction, people that had water usage that was 5% over the prior month will want a discount or something. That'll start happening. And so I feel if a council's going to do this, we're going to have to give him, staff, very specific parameters. I also feel because we do spend a lot of money to collect a lot of data, we ought to be able to get that data out of that system. I'm willing to wait for it, but I don't want to drag this out on forever. You would have 2 weeks to the next meeting, and then that way you have a list of eligible accounts, period. And people have to, it'll get reported out, okay? We can, if your account had a leak and it exceeded double the previous month, which kind of proves you had a leak, I guess, you're eligible, and we move on. That's what am I deliberating
If
too
I
much?
may enter myself into the conversation as well, you're calling for specificity, and I'd like to echo that.
Okay.
From a procedural standpoint, since the fees are established by the code in an ordinance, they should be waived by an ordinance as well. So we need to put something in writing for council to consider. So yes, we need something very specific. What I'm hearing tonight is, it appears as though council is interested in seeing some sort of ordinance that would create some sort of waiver. If y'all can define what that looks like tonight, I can bring that back at a later meeting.
I like the direction that you're going in combination. I like the direction of people reporting it, but definitely not, I mean, because I filled my bathtub, and that's gonna cause me to use more water. And that wasn't a leak, so I like the idea of double or even more than that, or some threshold so that the public knows that there's no point in calling, for one. And then secondly, though, I think we need to also think about that if they don't pay these bills while we're going through this process, we need to look at whether we're going to waive late fees, whether we're going to waive a late fee on, or how we're going to handle that as well. I'm not sure what other issues it might arise, but I like the idea of asking the citizens to come forward if they want some special treatment, and then, though, us giving some guidance.
Okay.
Trying to think of what we're trying to accomplish exactly. This was a disaster for most people of unprecedented proportions. If we write it in such a way that a guy drives through his own yard and runs over his own water line, is that what we wish to do? And I don't think that answer is yes. It is to address a certain disaster that it befall us. So we need to be careful of how we run those parameters. We're only trying to address this disaster.
I think they can find the water usage during the week of the hurricane from the data. And so that
Well,
perhaps should.
it would have to require a disaster declaration, things like that.
Yeah.
So it just can't be, I would suggest that, if we do an ordinance, I suggest that. So what I'm hearing, in order not to debate the whole thing continuously tonight, is just bring back an amendment to the ordinance, and then we can discuss it 2 weeks from now and hash some of that out.
Yeah.
And we might not do it, I don't know, I'm just saying, that's,
I think we need to. I think if you go ahead and take a stab at the percentage, we can discuss that next time. And I'd still think I'd like the call to be initiated by the customer.
yeah, yeah.
And also the dates of the usage.
Yeah, it's just gonna
From the
be,
date of the strike till 7 days after.
And we're collecting, and I know that you don't, and Charmel Donald don't want to hear it, but you're collecting a lot of data. It seems to me we ought to be able to get something out of that system.
Oh, well, we can
Well-
get it out. It's just that Donald, we didn't think we could do it this afternoon.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
After we visited with you about, the subject matter. So it was just this afternoon. We
Okay.
can get it out. But now, Mr. De La Garza brought up the period a week after 7 days. Is that, if council can kind of give us some guidelines on that, that would probably also help with the ordinance.
For the leak,
do you collect data on a weekly basis?
daily.
Daily? Oh,
See, and I want to visit that again. There is a computer that calculates, and I'm echoing here. What's the issue?
It does that when you get real excited.
And that just happened. Don't laugh, Mr. Halapasco. Okay, we have a computer system in place right now that when there's excessive usage for 2-3 days, you send a technician or an inspector to the door and you put a tag on the door that said, hey, check your water lines because the last 3 or 4 days you've had an excessive usage.
Under normal circumstances, that's absolutely true.
Just not during a hurricane.
Not during a hurricane, though.
But the data is still there on the computer.
Yeah.
The data's
So
there.
what's the difference? I mean, we take the date from the date of the hurricane strike to 7 days after, and you look at that and you have those
we can do that.
computers
Yeah, the leak,
flagged,
the leak-
or that address flagged for those dates.
yeah, the leak
So
data's
you'll know
there.
they'll have, so the Victoria Ag and Ranch is gonna be flagged, that, hey, look, excessive water usage from the date of the hurricane to 4 or 5 days after, so that's gonna be an easy one.
Yeah,
But
the leak
the
data is
residents
flagged.
also do that.
Yeah, Census has a chart that we can look
Exactly.
at that tracks all of that. We wouldn't get this data from the leak report. The leak report is a separate issue from what we're doing
But you can
here.
use the leak report to verify someone's claim.
We can
That's
use
right.
that.
So there is no major issue.
sure.
No, the question is it, does council wish to limit it to 7 days, 14 days, from the date the hurricane struck? That way, when Donald's looking at the data, I
But it
mean,
was also brought up about people who are gonna try to fraudulently claim something.
sure.
They
Well,
won't be able to do that.
It has to be for the billing cycle with respect to but there's a decision point about how much constitutes that waste. That's where you know. So, yeah, I would agree with the city manager that within that 7-day period, if you had extraordinary usage that constituted a leak caused by the hurricane, then any forgiveness will be with respect to that one billing cycle. Well, not, any other billing cycle's not eligible,
Exactly.
right? That's what, we're on the same page.
Exactly. Somebody
Okay.
calls in and says, I want a 50% discount. It's not on a record. We can't verify it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to really make sure we're on
Reject it.
we're talking about a potential discount. We're only talking about the water portion only. We're not just the consumption of the water. No other part of the bill, correct? I want to make sure not the sewer, not the garbage, not the base rate for the water meter, just the consumption
extra
only.
use.
Yes, the
Okay.
extra use.
Make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, so we're gonna have an ordinance that's flexible that we can discuss and figure some of those variables out at our next meeting.
That's right. The notes that I took here, I think are sufficient for me to get in the ballpark. And council, I'll just ask for your consideration that it'll be basically a rough draft of what you're considering that night. And then you guys can amend from the floor and make it fit what you ultimately want it to be.
Can I get a little bit direction on something else, though? While we're going through this next couple of week period, there's a potential that some of these bills are going to come due. So I need to understand how y'all want me to handle those.
If I may, hence one of the problems with doing this kind of thing, but that's the way it is. That's how things go. If I may suggest, I mean, we are not gonna refund money if people pay. We're just gonna apply it to the next few months. Those that have not paid, obviously it's not an issue, but if someone comes into you tomorrow and pays a bill that's, you know, instead of the normal $48 bill, it's $110, and they just pay it, it'll be incumbent upon them to come back to you later and say, oh, well, I did have a leak. I don't know.
Let me be a little bit more specific.
talking
I'm
about
talking about
turn-offs
late
or
fees
late
and
fees, that's
turn
what
off for non-payment is what I'm specifically
Oh, because it was so
talking about.
high they didn't pay it.
Yeah,
And are
they
you
just chose
offering-
not to pay.
Are you offering a payment plan as it is
We
now?
are offering a payment plan, and there's been at least 3 that have taken that option.
Okay.
Maybe do that.
But I would try to steer them into that, say the city council's working on the issue to credit back
Okay.
anything you've paid over for this usage, but so you're not tying your money up once you put it on a payment plan and then,
Pay their last month's bill.
yeah.
I-
1
Just be
month,
current
that's
on your
kind of
bill.
would be at least 1 month versus collecting $1,000 versus 20 times over.
And I know I mentioned something about late fees, but I really think it's incumbent upon the account person to do everything in their power to not have that bill go to a situation where it accrues late fees. You know, whether they go on a payment plan or something like that, instead of just saying, oh, they're going to deal with this in a few weeks, so I'm not going to pay my bill.
Okay.
I'm not encouraging that.
We'll do our best to catch all of those. Yes, sir.
How's the sewer bill calculated? Is it a percentage of water usage?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
How is the sewer bill calculated?
It's
Isn't it a percentage of the water usage?
yes, during the months of December, January, February. Yeah, during those months, during the winter months. So we won't be setting a new sewer rate for residential until April of next year. It would not unless it would not increase a normal residential account sewer rate. It would, possibility if it was like a restaurant that had a surcharge. We just have to catch those. We'd have to look for those.
That's a good thing. That one's good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Donald.
All right.
Charmel, okay. So we'll close our items from council back up, and then we'll readdress it in a couple weeks. Excuse me. Ordinances.
There's no
Oh,
ordinance.
I'm sorry, resolutions.
Yeah, we're all the way down to section.
I'm not
E.
used to looking at my agenda on the screen like this. There we go.
All right, we're down to E1, which is a resolution ratifying the purchase of an irrigation control system for the municipal golf course inside of Riverside Park from Professional Turf Products in the amount of $160,005.36, authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase and declaring an effective date.
Opt.
We have a motion and a second. You'll have questions. I know probably Colby wants to have a presentation.
Yeah, some of the questions that came
So-
up last week about flood proofing and how we'll keep it from being damaged again when the river floods again. Kobe's got just a few pictures, but you can see the box that electronics sit in.
I wanted to address real quick some of the questions that I received last week about the irrigation system and how we would take care of a flooding should occur again with that system. There's a few options. On this field controller, you'll see, which is out here in front, it is made of a hardened plastic that is water resistant for the most part from normal sprinkler heads getting on it or rain that comes through. The time that you would worry is that if you had a flood rise that sat there that would get into the electronics. And so I'll go through some of those. This unit that we have heard that we were trying to purchase is detachable from a base, and so it will normally be set on a 4-inch slab, a 24 by 24 concrete base. You will have 4 bolts that will hold it down. Then you have electric that runs to it, and then you have the hydraulic lines that run to control the individual sprinkler zones. Those are detachable. And then you can take these bolts off. Once you turn the power off, you can remove everything. And it's, we think about a 30-minute process per box that can be taken out, and if we have the time frame to be able to get to it. This shows the area that is where the hydraulics hook up. Each one of those would have to be taken off. Each one of those are attached with the hydraulic line, each one of those white cylinders that you see. If we choose to elevate the box, this is what we have come up with that could be done. This tubular concrete pedestal that's out front of the office, it was an example that I could give that would show a reference. We would have to go to a 36 diameter, which is larger than what this one is. We'd go 3 to 4 foot tall. In-house, we're looking at $475 with the materials, with an estimate of $17,000, just over $17,000. If it was installed by a contractor, I was taking cost times 2 to get to the $36,000 to be able to elevate that. And so I will answer any questions you may have or any other things that I can help you with.
How high would that elevate them? An additional, how many?
You could do 3 to 4 foot.
Would that satisfy like the 98 flood?
I would have to survey each one of those to find out where that height would be. Mr. Polisek, I'm not sure that I know the answer to that to give you a definite yes or a no.
Wouldn't the power still have to go through that?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the power
And similar
itself.
similar to that picture there, there's a light pole standing on top of that. The power runs right through the middle of that. And so we would put a conduit through that would hold the hydraulic lines and the electrical lines.
Okay, thank you. That would be solid.
Yes, ma'am.
In most cases, we have time to remove those. We usually have forewarning on a river flooding. The previous, according to, I think, as I understood Colby, the previous boxes were not that removable like these are.
Yes, the previous boxes, you had some electronics that could be removed, but to be able to move the entire box was not going to be this as convenient or as easy as this one is. They were put in a different way.
Colby, is that thing heavy enough or light enough for one person to remove it, or are you going to need more than one person to remove it?
If we were moving in an emergency situation that we had to get it, I would have a staff of 8 to 9 people and 2 people per person per box would be working, taking that off. They roughly are about 45, 50 pounds. They're not that heavy. They're kind of hard to get a hold of. And so I brought it in like with a dolly, but it could be done fairly easy.
Is that the best use of man time during an emergency when flood's coming to worry about removing sprinkler systems versus other pressing issues?
Dr. Allen, I think you have, our Parks Department would not be doing this. You would have a golf course staff, their normal maintenance staff that would handle that during that time. So I don't believe that they would be used in any hurricane preparation or anything of that nature.
How long does it take to disconnect the box and remove it? Each box?
Roughly 30 minutes per box, and that's not
And how many boxes are we going to have?
36.
could
Where
do-
do you plan to store them during an emergency?
Well, we have a maintenance shed there at the golf course, or that could be brought up to, my shed at my new office there. So there's places, and they can be put outside up high, just, it'd just be somewhere where it wouldn't flood, because they are water, resistant for the most part.
Suppose you could raise them up over the years. You don't have to do all of them at once. You could find the lowest line ones maybe and build those pedals, a couple of them a year, those concrete. I'm just thinking, that's,
We're still under contract with the advisors for the golf course, correct?
Sorry?
We still have a contract and we're using that,
Yes, sir.
that contract.
Foresight? Yes, sir.
Yeah, what was their recommendation?
As far as elevating,
Sure.
I don't know that they gave a recommendation, Dr. Young. It was, the boxes are removable. It wasn't something that I sought their advice on.
I mean, I would suggest that maybe we do, that we're paying them for them and they're experts in this.
most golf courses, I'll bet, aren't in flood zones like this one. Unfortunately, I'm just thinking it.
We're paying $40-something thousand for them to steer us in proper directions. I think we should utilize them.
Well, what question would you ask them?
One, is this the irrigation system that we should be using? And two, do we need to elevate them? What's the best way when we're in a flood zone?
Okay, because I thought he just said that, move them or elevate them. I mean, I
Well, I
can't,
would like a professional's opinion in that regard.
okay. Mr. Halpaska, Jim?
Well, that's what was my question. By elevating them and leaving them there, you have the danger of tree limbs blocking up against them. You get enough force, and I don't care how big and heavy that thing is. That water's got more force, especially if you start trapping tree limbs and stuff up against it. Anybody that's ever owned property in the country and had a creek knows you've got to have a water gap or something that just tears your fence. This wouldn't stand a flood if it's started gathering trash around it. There's a lot of trash in a flood way. So don't know which is the better either. I'm asking. Elevating, it sounds like a simple answer. However, it's gonna catch a lot of tree limbs and debris.
Debris.
It wouldn't hold up anyway. So we would spend extra money. Would we get the value that we hoped we would achieve? It's a question, I don't know.
Sure. What's been more likely to happen here, a hurricane or flood?
Flood.
That's correct.
And I mean, we have no problem elevating them. We just, the questions came up last week on how to flood-proof or, the boxes. And so we can remove them or we can elevate them. So it's just, it's not a problem.
Quite unique. It is called Riverside Golf Course, and there are others that are close to rivers, but, not many.
And it's in the floodway, as I said last week, so,
Is this an expense that we're putting on the FEMA list?
the replacement of the irrigation, yes, sir.
Okay, then I vote for elevating them.
Now, I'm not sure if we can get reimbursed for the elevation, but we can attempt to.
I'd rather go with elevation than not do anything at all, just to trust manpower at a time of an emergency. Most floods are not gonna be this catastrophic. From my history here, born and raised, and I live down there, you get a foot or two over the golf course, not like the hurricanes and the flood of '98, and I was here. So I'll go for elevation. I don't agree with the trash thing.
And then we can go years without a flood too sometimes, which is,
That's right.
So Colby didn't believe it flooded when he first came here because, and then you
Been
learned.
through 3 of them.
We told you, yeah, they come and it is what it is, but,
How
Yeah.
far down do you plan to put these piers?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How far down do you plan to put the concrete?
I would have to talk to Monty Webb. He's my superintendent as far as the placing them. I mean, the normal pedestal that the company would come in and build would just be like you form up a sidewalk. It's not meant to hold a lot of movement left or right on it. And so, I would imagine that we'd go a foot and a half down. We will put some rebar that will go through down into the ground, but we're not gonna bury these things 3 or 4 foot in the ground.
Because I saw some fences that were completely out of the ground with the hurricane wind. I don't know whether the water could be that strong that would knock them out too. Like you said, with debris, it will. You get some debris around there, you're gonna knock some of these out.
There's a concrete pad there now, right, that they sit on?
Some of them, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have studs in it, it bolts down.
Yes, sir.
I'm getting in the weeds, I know, but if it were me, I'd investigate getting some pipe and a couple of plate steel and just bolt that down and bolt that on top of the other one, but it's for y'all to decide. That's just the way we,
As far as trees that were knocked down, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
would be deeper than a few feet of rebar.
Well, we're all conditioned to think about the hurricane event, and we hadn't had anything like that in decades, really. The normal flood is what we should probably be concerned about here.
That's what I'm thinking about is the flood and the fact that they do have to be dug down with piers and, you know, but I don't know what the depth is. You know, yes, we're thinking about the hurricane and we're thinking about logs coming down and that sort of thing, but I think it's the flood that we really need to be looking at, especially if we're making the decision not to be basically not to be pulling them back off.
How long does it take you to water the whole course right now manually, dragging the hoses around?
Well, right now, we're not dragging hoses around. We're having to go to individual boxes, and each one of the white cylinders that you see there, you have a ability to manually turn that on and off. And so we're having to go through and turn each one of those on and off, let it run for 20 minutes at a time or 10 minutes, depending on what you know, where we want to water and how much we want to water. And so that's what we're having to do right now.
I see.
We don't have the ability to just start the system and let it run by itself.
And our decision tonight is to ratify the contract to keep these units right here. We don't necessarily tell them how to install them, I don't think, right?
I think that I got the impression that elevation is how.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna recommend
Sounds
that, and
like
you're all
the
gonna do it.
council, and that was part of the last week, the impression I got last week, the reason it was tabled was because we couldn't answer all the questions about floodproof in it.
Yeah. So what are you gonna do?
We'll put it on those concrete cylinders. We'll just work on that in-house
Because
and,
the FEMA money, yeah.
Or would they be dug down into the ground? I mean, or would they just be?
yes, they will be dug down in the ground.
I don't know
But
what
like
the ones
Colby
are.
said, and I don't know how far down, but it'll be a stable base, you know. Colby staff will work on that.
And I'm sure I can lean on engineering department and should I need to. So,
And we'll call
yeah.
811 before we dig.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Everybody get their questions answered?
How sturdy are those against a golf ball?
Depends on the golfer. huh?
in the rough, Dr. Young, not the fairway.
Gonna hurt that with a golf ball.
Are you talking about your own golf game?
Stop water in the rough.
Okay, no
I
further,
did one in the rough.
no further questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign? Okay. Thank you for answering all those questions, Colby. Now we have one city manager report.
Wednesday, Donald brought to my attention that getting ready to bid the 2018 seal coat projects, and that based on the current prices that they were seeing, there was a possibility of adding some additional streets to the bid. They're looking at a timing issue, but if council doesn't wish to make a decision tonight, that's fine. But I'll let Donald talk about, he handed out the streets, so I'll let him talk about which streets were already planned for 2018 that was approved through the budget, and which possibilities of adding some additional streets that had been postponed. So I'll stop.
About an opportunity that we have to play a little catch-up on our street maintenance program. I've set out a packet of information in front of you. The first 3 pages are a detail of the streets that we're looking at. The subdivisions on page 1 were the subdivisions that were originally presented to y'all during the budget to be done in the fiscal year 2018 seal coat project. This budget was set back, several years ago on prices at that time, and we weren't real sure how the prices were going to carry out in the future. As we've come to our current date, these prices have held really steady and the prices are good. So we believe that we can add in the other subdivisions that are included on the last two pages and accomplish all of those with the same amount of money, which was $2,052,000. So I will answer any questions you may have.
Well, let's talk about, on page 2,
Yes, ma'am.
the first one, Broad Acres, the third one on that page, Sam Houston Heights,
Okay?
and the third page, Shenandoah, were all moved from previous. They were originally
Yes, ma'am. I'm-
scheduled in 2016.
That's correct.
So-
If we go back to when we originally presented this maintenance program to council back in 2014, 2015, those items, Broad Acres, Sam Houston, and Shenandoah were originally scheduled to be done in 2016. Because some of the issues that we had when we did Woodway and Bridle Ridge, we were afraid that as we moved forward with this program, there may be more reclaiming involved than just straight sealing. And so we kind of backed off on what we were originally going to do. And then now that we're back in 2018, we've revisited these streets, and we think that they are ripe for just a seal job, just a seal. And we have not, I will be upfront with you, we have not gone and done soil testing, but we will be doing soil testing before we do these projects, before we dig in and start doing these projects.
Which we didn't do the very first projects,
We did not do those on the
Right,
first
right.
projects.
so,
And we learned a lesson from that, and we are doing those moving forward.
yeah.
And then the downtown area, that is new. That was scheduled for 20, I think, 20. And we're ahead of,
Yeah.
that utility project is running ahead of schedule, so those, that's project's finishing up. So those, normally, we schedule those streets to coincide when we finish the utility project. And since the utility project's running ahead, we believe we can get those done. And if you've driven in that area, those streets are in pretty bad shape.
Yes, ma'am, they are. So we're excited about the opportunity, and we're hoping to get a consensus from y'all on if this is what y'all would like us to move forward with.
Donald, I'm sorry, does this include the extra sweepings from the excess aggregate?
Yes, all of our
And-
contracts now have extra sweeping in there to
Okay.
pick up any loose aggregate.
Now, you've changed the aggregate since those first few jobs to a smaller,
Yes, we use a number 3 and a number 4, and Ken, I think before we're using two fours prior to that, so the 3 and the 4 lock together better.
less scaling,
Yes,
which
sir.
was always a problem.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay.
What's the anticipated extension of time for these streets when we do this maintenance?
Ken, do you have any addition, how long this will take us?
No, she's talking about
No,
the life,
yeah, how-
extending the
Oh,
life of the
I'm
street
sorry,
before you have to
I'm
do
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry,
The,
That's okay.
The additional life, we anticipate 10 years.
About 10 years.
It'll extend the life of these streets 10 years.
I think we should bid it. I mean, if the prices don't come back like we think they are, then we don't have to do them. So I mean, there's no harm in bidding it. I think let's try and get them.
And you need to do this like pretty quick by, what'd you say, Sunday, or did you say Monday?
If possible, we'd like to have our first advertisement for bid on Sunday.
Okay.
And the reason is we want to get a jump out there and have this project ready to go and be at the front of the line for getting the materials, getting this work done.
And we would have been bidding that first page of streets on Sunday, and then when Donald mentioned it last week about looking at the prices,
Good,
so I said, well, we may have a meeting.
yeah.
With rising prices, anytime we can defer any maintenance, it's not a good thing. The more we can do with this, the better off we are, just simply put.
Okay. I think it's a good thing. Y'all okay with that? I mean, it's consensus. Go bid it and see what it looks like when he comes back.
Okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Y'all need anything else from
No,
us?
sir.
Okay. If nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.